You find a large piece of land near a tourist destination. You build a roller coaster, add a few family rides, create a colorful entrance, hire enthusiastic employees, and start selling tickets. From the outside, owning a theme park sounds almost beautifully simple. People pay to enter. They wait for rides, they buy lunch, take photos, and leave carrying souvenirs that cost far more than the plastic inside them. Build something exciting enough and the crowds should arrive. But that is not how a theme park works. A successful park is not merely a collection of rides surrounded by restaurants. It is a carefully balanced machine that converts land, capital, operating hours, and human attention into revenue. Every part depends on every other part. The rides create demand, the pathways distribute it, the queues absorb it, the employees process it, the food and merchandise capture additional spending, the marketing replaces the visitors who do not return soon enough. And the machine has an uncomfortable feature. It can look magnificent while losing money. A roller coaster may dominate the skyline. Thousands of people may pass through the entrance. The parking lot may appear busy, yet the owner can still be trapped beneath construction debt, seasonal payroll, maintenance costs, and attendance assumptions that never became reality. So what does it actually take to own a theme park? The obvious answer is money. The more accurate answer is that it takes an ability to predict and control a system in which almost every important variable can move against you at the same time. Before choosing a roller coaster, you need to answer a question that is far less glamorous. Why should this park exist here? Theme parks are destination businesses. Even regional parks need access to a large enough population, tourists or both. The location must be reachable. The surrounding roads need sufficient capacity. Hotels, airports, and highways can strengthen demand, but they also create competition for the visitor's budget. A family does not compare a theme park only with another theme park. It compares the visit with a beach day, a sporting event, a concert, a vacation somewhere else, or simply keeping the money. That means the owner is not selling rides. The owner is selling a reason to surrender an entire day. This becomes especially important because major parks are built around what the industry calls a catchment area, the population and visitor base from which the attraction can realistically draw customers. A famous global resort may persuade people to cross an ocean. A regional park may depend heavily on people living within several hours of the entrance. Those are completely different businesses, even when both contain roller coasters. A regional park needs repeat visits, season pass holders, and enough new attractions to prevent familiarity from turning into boredom. A destination resort needs hotels, transportation, international marketing, and enough content to justify several days of travel. Misjudge that market, and nothing inside the gates can fully repair the mistake. A spectacular attraction can increase demand. It cannot move the city closer. Then comes the land. The site needs more than open space. It needs road access, electrical capacity, water, sewage, drainage, emergency access, and room for parking. Depending on the climate and terrain, the developer may also face flood control, soil problems, environmental reviews, noise restrictions, and extensive permitting. This is where the theme park begins to behave less like an entertainment business and more like a strange fusion of municipal planning, heavy industry, and theater. The owner may need to construct infrastructure that guests will never notice. Underground utilities are not photogenic. Drainage channels do not appear on souvenir shirts. A widened road creates no emotional attachment, but without them, the fantasy cannot open. Even the parking lot is part of the economic design. It must process large waves of arriving vehicles in the morning and release them after closing. A poorly designed entrance can create congestion before the guest has experienced a single attraction. That frustration enters the park with them. And once a family begins the day irritated, every later inconvenience feels larger. After the land and infrastructure comes the part everyone expected, the attractions. But buying rides is not like ordering furniture for a hotel. Large rides can require years of planning, engineering, manufacturing, site preparation, installation, testing, and certification. The price of the physical ride is only one component. Foundations, electrical systems, control buildings, queue structures, landscaping, themed scenery, and surrounding guest areas add more layers. The biggest companies operate at a scale that makes the phrase owning a theme park almost misleading. Disney announced plans in 2023 to invest roughly $60 billion over about a decade in its parks, resorts, and cruise businesses. In the United Kingdom, Comcast has announced an investment exceeding $6 billion for a future universal resort, including billions in construction and further operating investment after opening. These are not ordinary property developments with rides attached. They are long-horizon infrastructure projects backed by multinational companies. That does not mean every park requires billions. A small family amusement park, indoor attraction, or local entertainment center can exist at a completely different scale. But the range is so wide that asking, "How much does a theme park cost?" is similar to asking how much a city costs. The answer depends on what kind of city you are building. A few mechanical rides on leased land are one business. A themed destination with custom attractions, hotels and transportation is another species entirely. What both have in common is that spending does not stop when construction ends. Before opening, the owner must recruit and train employees, stock restaurants and stores, test operating procedures, purchase insurance, establish maintenance programs, market the park, and keep enough cash available to survive a launch that may not perform as expected. That last part is easy to underestimate. A theme park can be valuable on paper and still die from a lack of cash. The rides may be worth millions, the land may have long-term value, but payroll, electricity, food deliveries, advertising, and debt payments arrive now. A roller coaster cannot be cut into pieces and used to pay Friday's wages without destroying the business. So the owner needs working capital, money available to keep operating while revenue develops. This is where a dangerous assumption often enters the plan. Developers estimate attendance, multiply it by the ticket price, and produce a number that looks comforting. But attendance multiplied by ticket price is not revenue reality. Not everyone pays the advertised price. Children, groups, pass holders, promotional customers, and discounted visitors can reduce the average admission revenue per person. Taxes and distribution arrangements may also matter. Then the park must pay the costs required to serve those guests. A crowd is not automatically profitable. The more useful number is often per capita revenue, the average amount collected from each visitor across admission and spending inside the park. Publicly traded operators reveal why this matters. United Parks and Resorts, the company behind parks including SeaWorld and Busch Gardens, separately reports admission revenue per guest and in-park spending per guest. In one 2025 quarter, it reported admission per capita of $39.57 and in-park spending of $35.82. The exact numbers change by company and period, but the structure exposes the real business. The ticket gets the customer through the gate, while spending continues throughout the visit. Disney describes a similar collection of revenue streams. Its experiences business earns money from admissions, food, beverages, merchandise, hotel rooms, cruises, vacation properties, and licensing. The visible park is part of a wider system designed to capture spending before, during, and after the visit. This corrects the first major misconception. The roller coaster is not necessarily the product being sold. It may be the reason the customer enters a controlled commercial environment. Once inside, the guest encounters food, drinks, games, merchandise, photo products, premium experiences, and sometimes paid systems that reduce waiting. At larger resorts, the visit may include hotels, transportation, and multiple parks. The owner therefore cares not only about how many people arrive, but how long they stay, where they move, and what they do between attractions. That brings us to the hidden mechanism beneath almost everything else: throughput. Throughput is the number of guests an attraction or operation can process within a period of time. For a ride, it may mean riders per hour. For a restaurant, it may mean meals served. For the entrance, it means how quickly visitors can pass through security and ticket scanning. A ride can look spectacular and still be economically awkward if its capacity is too low. Suppose a new attraction becomes the main reason people visit, but it processes guests slowly. Demand concentrates around it. The queue expands. Nearby paths become congested. Guests spend hours waiting and experience fewer other attractions. The park has succeeded in generating desire, but failed to process it. That distinction changes everything. Guests do not purchase a ride. They purchase access to a limited day. Every hour spent in a queue is an hour that cannot be used elsewhere. Some waiting is expected and can even signal popularity. Too much waiting makes the customer question whether the ticket delivered value. The most impressive ride may therefore create the most damaging bottleneck, and the problem does not remain at the ride entrance. When one major attraction goes down, its waiting guests do not disappear. They flow toward other rides, restaurants, and pathways. Wait times increase elsewhere. employees face more complaints. Refunds, compensation, or recovery measures may be required. Mobile applications and signage must redirect people. One technical failure becomes a park-wide redistribution problem. This is why reliability matters economically, not merely operationally. A ride that is available only part of the day does more than reduce its own capacity. It pushes demand into the rest of the system. If it is the attraction featured in advertising, downtime can also damage trust. The customer may have traveled specifically for something that is now surrounded by barriers and apologetic employees. The owner has already spent the marketing money, the guest has already paid, but the experience promised by the advertisement no longer exists. Capacity planning affects food as well. A restaurant that cannot serve the lunch rush creates a queue at exactly the moment families are hungry, tired, and less patient. If the line looks unbearable, guests may delay eating, purchase less, or leave the park earlier. A lost meal is not just lost food revenue. It may shorten the visit, which can reduce later merchandise and beverage sales. Again, one failure spreads. This makes labor one of the most difficult balancing acts in the business. Theme parks need ride operators, technicians, food workers, cleaners, security personnel, performers, guest service teams, retail staff, landscapers, managers, and many other roles. Many parks also experience enormous seasonal variation. They may need large numbers of temporary employees during summer, weekends, holidays, and special events, then sharply reduce operations during quieter periods. Too few employees can close food counters, reduce ride capacity, and leave parts of the park dirty. Too many employees can destroy margins on a weak attendance day. The owner is constantly making decisions before knowing exactly how many people will arrive. Weather makes those decisions harder. A rainy forecast may discourage visitors, even if the rain never arrives. Extreme heat can change purchasing patterns and reduce comfort. Storms can close outdoor attractions. Cold weather can weaken demand in seasonal markets. The park cannot store today's unused capacity and sell it tomorrow. Once an operating day ends, every empty ride seat from that day has vanished forever. This is a perishable inventory business. An airline cannot sell yesterday's empty seat. A hotel cannot sell last night's vacant room. A theme park cannot recover a Tuesday when the attractions ran nearly empty. That creates pressure to use dynamic pricing, promotions, group sales, season passes, and special events to shift attendance toward weaker periods. But discounting contains its own trap. Lower prices can increase attendance while reducing revenue quality. If the park attracts more people who spend less, congestion can rise without profit improving proportionally. The park may appear healthier because the pathways are busy, while the financial result remains weak. A packed parking lot can hide a pricing problem. Season passes illustrate the same complexity. They provide cash, encourage repeat visits, and build loyalty. But frequent pass holders can consume ride capacity while generating less admission revenue on each visit. They may still spend on food and merchandise, but behavior varies. The owner must understand not only attendance, but attendance composition. Who came? What did they pay? How much did they spend? How often will they return? Which attraction caused the visit? Did the experience persuade them to recommend the park? Those questions lead to another surprising requirement. A theme park must continuously sell the idea that it has changed. A successful attraction can generate demand for years, but novelty fades. Regional parks often promote new rides, festivals, seasonal events, or themed areas because the audience needs a fresh reason to return. This creates a capital treadmill. The owner spends heavily to create the park. Then, after opening, the market begins asking what comes next. Large operators can rotate investment across multiple properties and connect attractions to movies, television, games, and recognizable characters. Smaller, independent parks may not possess that ecosystem. They must create attention through local reputation, distinctive attractions, pricing, or events. A park can be well operated and still become familiar. Familiarity is not failure, but it weakens urgency. A family may enjoy the park and still postpone returning for several years. The owner, meanwhile, continues paying for maintenance, staffing, and upgrades. This is why recognizable intellectual property can be valuable. Characters and fictional worlds arrive with existing emotional demand. But licensing does not magically solve the business. It can involve royalties, creative restrictions, approval processes, and additional investment. The brand may attract visitors, but the park still has to deliver an experience worthy of the brand. A famous name attached to a weak park may accelerate disappointment, and that brings us to one of the clearest demonstrations of how the entire system can collapse. In April 2008, Hard Rock Park opened in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It was promoted as a major rock and roll theme park, built at a reported cost of about $400 million. The concept had a recognizable brand, elaborate theming, roller coasters, live entertainment, and a location inside an established tourism market. Contemporary coverage described it as the first major new American theme park in roughly a decade. On the surface, many of the expected ingredients were present. Myrtle Beach already attracted tourists. Hard Rock was internationally recognizable. The park offered themed areas inspired by different periods and styles of music. Its attractions included major coasters, shows, and an amphitheater. The opening was ambitious, but theme parks do not survive on ambition. They survive on the relationship between their fixed obligations and the customers they can repeatedly attract. Hard Rock Park opened into the worsening economic environment of 2008. Fuel prices, financial stress, and weakening travel demand placed pressure on tourism. Reports also described inadequate marketing resources and attendance far below what the business required. The park ultimately recorded only about 370,000 visitors during its first season, according to reporting compiled from local coverage. The exact causes are still debated, and it would be too convenient to blame one factor. The financial crisis mattered, marketing mattered, pricing mattered, location within the broader tourist market mattered. The appeal of the concept to families mattered. The amount of debt and the lack of financial breathing room mattered. That is precisely the lesson. A theme park rarely fails because one roller coaster was not exciting enough. It fails when several assumptions depend on one another, and too many of them prove optimistic at once. Hard Rock Park needed visitors. Visitors needed to know the park existed and consider it worth the price. Strong marketing required cash. Continuing operations required cash. Debt and fixed expenses continued, while attendance disappointed. Weak attendance therefore created the first pressure. Less revenue. Less revenue reduced the ability to market aggressively and absorb losses. Weak marketing made it harder to correct attendance. As financial pressure increased, operating hours were reduced and the season ended early. That made the park less available and signaled distress. The park filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in September 2008, only months after opening. It later moved toward liquidation after failing to secure a rescue in its original form. Then came the number that revealed how severely value can collapse in this industry. In early 2009, the closed park was sold through bankruptcy proceedings for approximately $25 million, a fraction of its reported development cost. That did not mean the rides had physically lost almost all their usefulness overnight. It meant the park, as a functioning business, had lost the system that gave those assets value. A roller coaster is worth more when it is operating inside a healthy park with customers, employees, marketing, and cash flow. Remove those connections, and it becomes an enormous specialized machine attached to a distressed property. The new owners attempted a restart. The Hard Rock branding was removed, and the property reopened in 2009 as Freestyle Music Park. This was a chance to test whether the main problem had been the original capital structure and branding rather than the underlying market. But the new version also failed to create a sustainable operation. It closed after the 2009 season and did not reopen as a theme park. The property remained dormant for years, and the rides were eventually removed or dismantled. The case exposes the central contradiction of theme park ownership. Building the park is incredibly difficult, but completing construction is not the finish line. It is the moment the risk changes shape. Before opening, the primary risk is whether the park can be financed, approved, and built. After opening, the risk becomes whether enough customers will arrive, pay enough, spend enough, and leave satisfied enough for the process to repeat. A completed theme park has enormous fixed costs and a limited ability to reduce them without damaging the product. You can close a restaurant inside the park on a quiet day, but the empty storefront weakens the atmosphere. You can reduce ride operations, but queues grow. You can shorten operating hours, but the ticket appears less valuable. You can cut entertainment, cleaning, or maintenance, but guests notice. Cost reduction can therefore make the attendance problem worse. That is the chain reaction every owner must fear. Attendance falls. Revenue declines. The park cuts marketing or operations. The experience becomes weaker. Customer satisfaction and urgency decline. Attendance falls again. One failure does not stay in its lane. It moves through the park. The opposite chain reaction can occur in a successful operation. A strong new attraction increases demand. Higher attendance produces more ticket and in-park revenue. That cash supports maintenance, marketing, and future investment. New investment gives customers a reason to return. Hotels and additional experiences can extend the visit, increasing spending further. Success creates options. Failure removes them. But even success must be managed carefully, because excessive demand can damage the product. If a new attraction draws more people than the park can process, roads congest, queues expand, and prices may rise. The park can earn more while some guests feel the experience is getting worse. This is the operating paradox. The owner wants high attendance, but not unmanaged attendance. An empty park feels unsuccessful and cannot support its costs. An overcrowded park makes guests feel they paid to stand still. The ideal condition is not maximum demand. It is demand that the system can serve profitably. That requires forecasting, reservation systems, pricing, staffing, ride capacity, and constant operational adjustment. It also explains why large operators study guest behavior in extraordinary detail. Where do crowds form? At what time do restaurants become overwhelmed? Which ride causes visitors to cross the park? How does weather change purchases? Does a nighttime show keep guests inside longer? Does a seasonal event create a new visit, or merely shift an existing one? Small changes can affect thousands of decisions. Consider a nighttime spectacular. It costs money to produce and may not require a separate ticket. At first glance, it looks like an expense added after the rides are already operating. But if the show persuades families to stay several additional hours, those guests may purchase dinner, drinks, or merchandise. It can also distribute departures, strengthen the emotional ending of the day, and increase the perceived value of admission. The entertainment is not only entertainment, it is time management. Food is not only food, it is revenue, crowd distribution, and guest recovery. A shaded restaurant may restore a tired family that would otherwise leave early. A parade is not only a performance, it can pull crowds toward a route while reducing pressure in another area. A theme park owner is constantly shaping movement without making the customer feel managed. The best parks make this system disappear. Guests remember the castle, coaster, or character. They rarely remember the drainage, dispatch intervals, labor schedules, kitchen capacity, and debt structure that made the day possible. That invisibility can make the business look easier than it is. So what are the possible outcomes for an owner? The best case outcome is the creation of a destination powerful enough to generate repeat visits, pricing power, hotel demand, merchandise sales, and continuous expansion. At that level, the park can become part of a broader ecosystem involving media, tourism, property, and licensing. But this is the rare summit, not the default result. A more realistic successful outcome is a regional park with loyal customers, disciplined costs, reliable attractions, sensible debt, and steady reinvestment. It may never become a global icon. It does not need to. It needs to understand its market and earn enough from each season to maintain the product and finance the next reason to visit. A weaker outcome is stagnation. Attendance remains adequate, but the park cannot afford major investment. Attractions age, competitors improve, discounts become more common, maintenance consumes a growing share of capital. The park survives, but gradually loses relevance. Then there is the failure scenario. The owner borrows heavily based on optimistic attendance. Construction costs rise. Opening is delayed or marketing is underfunded. The first season disappoints. Cash reserves disappear. Operations are reduced. Guests perceive declining value. Lenders and investors refuse to contribute more. The rides are still standing. The business is already gone, so what does it take to own a theme park? It takes enough capital to build it, enough liquidity to survive disappointment, and enough discipline not to confuse a crowded day with a healthy company. It takes a site that can support the operation, a market large enough to sustain it, and a concept strong enough to make people choose it. It takes attractions that generate demand and process that demand. It takes employees, maintenance, food operations, technology, safety systems, marketing, and continuous reinvestment. Above all, it takes an understanding that the park is not a pile of assets. It is a network of promises. The advertisement promises excitement. The ticket promises access. The ride promises availability. The queue promises eventual reward. The restaurant promises relief. The entire property promises that the guests' limited time will be worth what they paid. Break one promise, and the rest of the system absorbs the pressure. Break enough of them, and even a $400 million park can become a liquidation sale. Owning a theme park is not really about owning roller coasters. It is about keeping thousands of moving parts, millions of dollars and millions of human expectations operating on the same schedule.